Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code squarespace.com/Engadget. Hey everybody, welcome to the Engadget podcast for the week of September 30th. My name is Brian Heater. I'm the guy sitting in the, I don't know what color green, like a teal or a...
It's almost like a TV yellow.
Well, we got a great deal on it at the yard sale last week. So.
Yeah, it wasn't this color when we bought it. Peter on opposite me is a Squarespace user.
I am. I did not take advantage of the free trial since it was only just learned about it right now.
Sure.
But I use it for my personal blog.
You like it so much you actually paid money for it.
Yeah, I paid for like the year in advance.
Like you had to work for that money. And then you use that money to pay for that service.
Yeah, and I give away all this content for free. There's not even any ads on my personal blog. So.
Terrence O'Brien, have you ever used Squarespace?
I have not, but I'm very excited that we have our own code. That's like
fantastic. Yeah. So go, put that on the internet so that people know that they're listening to this, and more people can give us money to make the show, and we can stay in this nice studio. That Squarespace ad is the only thing that's keeping us in this beautiful studio right now.
It's paid for all this nice soundproofing and the baffling. It's good.
If 5 people don't use the Squarespace code before the end of the show, these lights are literally we're going to be doing the show in the dark. Thanks everyone for joining us. Yeah, this is so we're back in the Cooper studio here at 770.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I'd say it's a step up from the Nook.
The Nook.
That we've been using.
Big step up.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how many more podcasts we could do in that space.
were you on your you were wearing thin?
He was getting ready to quit just because of that.
I was on the edge of madness.
I want to start actually things off by talking about the fact that our Expand New York schedule is live. We have been talking about this a lot on the podcast. We will continue to be talking about this a lot on the podcast because it is a little over a month. It's about a month and a week away, which is terrifying.
It is a little bit terrifying.
Yeah. We got a super good lineup. LeVar Burton is going to be there. We've got Reggie Watts there. We've got people from Facebook. We've got the lead developer evangelist for Google Glass. Sony will be there. Pebble, Wikimedia, Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's going to be a packed couple days.
Yeah, all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah, I feel bad for those poor saps in San Francisco who went to that one because this one's going to be so much better.
That's all right. When we go back to San Francisco next year, we'll say the same thing about all the poor saps.
I mean, we could be in any number of cities next year. Who knows?
Ooh, I suggest we go...
Culver City. There's Bakersfield. You got your Fresnos.
I was going to suggest like Hawaii or something.
Hawaii, oh yeah, that's a step up from Modesto, I suppose. So yeah, tickets are available now for that thing that I just said. Not a ton in the way of actual news happening this week, but we do have a lot of reviews to run down. I wanted to start things off with the Samsung Galaxy Note 3 review that we did, and throw it over to Peter actually, because you've seen one of these things in person, right?
Yeah, I have one
in my pocket.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Was that just sheer coincidence that you had that thing in your pocket? You didn't see the rundown.
No, I did see the rundown, okay. But I know that we reviewed the global edition, but I have the AT&T version.
Yeah. Is this your primary driver at this point?
Well, it has been for the past 24 hours.
How's the past day been?
Yeah, exactly. I've used the other notes, used the original one and the Note 2, and actually. Surprised by how much I like this one. Not that I've always been sort of partial to larger phones, so I'm not one of those people who's sort of like, oh, my hand can't fit or whatever.
You've got pretty big hands.
I've got I have regular sized hands.
Yeah.
But
everybody's got big hands compared to me. I think.
But it's like it fits pretty well. It's very thin, and one of the nice things about it is they changed the back. The stitching is like. You actually can't call it skeuomorphic because it's like a real object. It's like real stitching, not just like virtual stitching.
We're also not allowed to say skeuomorphic anymore.
Oh, is that banned?
The iOS 7 thing.
Yeah, that's banned. The faux leather makes it actually very easy to hold.
Yeah.
And I did drop the Note 2 and smash it, which is the only phone I've ever done that with.
Why do you think that is? Just
because it was big and it's very slippery.
Wind resistance?
Yeah.
A strong breeze
almost knocked me over.
It over his hand.
But one of the things I'll say is that the phone is almost about the same size. It's very thin.
The screen's a little larger.
The screen's 5.9 inches, I think, and there's almost no bezel on the edges. But one of the things that's great about it is.
Wait, let me do a test. Let me see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see this. Okay.
I was thinking
Okay,
that
this is
before.
the
I was like,
Nexus 7. This is the Nexus 7. All right, which one is which one is the Note 3? Which one's the Nexus 7?
The white one.
Think about it. It's like an inch difference between these two devices. It does. I mean, obviously, it does make a pretty.
The
big
inch
difference,
does make
and
a big
This
difference.
thing is all bezel.
Yeah.
But I will say that when you're at this screen size of like above, say, 5 inches, 1080p is a must. I mean, the difference, you know, when you're below 5 inches, the difference between, say, 1080p and 720p is, I can still usually tell. I can tell the difference between, say, the HTC One, which is 1080p, and the Moto X, which is 720p. I can see the difference in the clarity of the text. But there's a real difference between 720p that was on the Note, or actually I don't even know if it's 720p, but you can tell that the on the Note 2 versus the Note 3, which gets that jump up to 1080p, you can see a real difference. I mean, the text looks great, images are very crisp. It's a nice screen just to begin with, but I feel like if you're going to have something that's above 5 inches, you have to have 1080p.
What are you doing with a phone that large? I mean, what benefit does that give you personally? Are you watching video on it?
I have not yet because I haven't had time, I guess. But
you've used large phones, obviously.
You know what? It's just everything. It's very easy to type on. Everything is easy to read. I don't know. I mean, there's just it feels like having like just a big. It's like since it's basically just screen. I mean, it's like you're just having like everything you want right there. There's no. There's nothing cramped about it. Like you have all the real estate you need for text and sites and apps and things like that.
How much time do you spend actually talking on it, though?
Well, I don't really. I try to avoid talking on the phone in general.
Sure. I mean, that's a good.
I
move.
have a
I
real
was just
phobia.
wondering.
Yeah.
There.
You mean like physically holding it up?
Yeah,
to
because
I
it
use
makes
headphones.
sense. It makes sense if you're going to primarily be texting and emailing, but I do feel like this is like. Eventually, that's got to be a little bit.
I don't see people holding phones up to their heads that much anymore. Like I think the hardware is coming around to that fact finally.
Well, I mean, we've seen our colleague Zach Honig hold his.
Well, Zach Honig's a ridiculous man.
What is he using these days?
I believe the Note 2, right?
I don't think he's upgraded to the 3 yet, but I'm sure he will in the near future.
Yeah, I've seen him plenty of times hold that thing up to his head and wonder what
It's
he's
really
thinking.
not that. It's really not that bad, right?
It's a little
Oh,
comical.
I look totally normal.
Still.
It's a little cartoonish, but give me a year and I think it'll look fine.
Yeah.
I think Samsung is leading the charge.
Here's the thing: if like phones had always been this size, we
Yeah.
would have never thought twice about
They
it.
used to be.
Well, that's true. I mean,
They just shrunk down.
They
in
got
the interim.
smaller and now they got bigger again.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's really that big of a deal.
But I mean, we're so
To me, it's like a weird. Like I can get like the tablet looks a little bit, a little bit off, but we're not talking about like. Do people remember the Nokia N-Gage?
Oh,
Side talk?
Jesus.
Yeah,
Okay,
holding a
that was
joystick.
silly, right?
That's like
Yeah,
holding
that
a
was
Game Boy
absurd.
up to your head.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know what?
And sideways.
Yeah.
And the reason that happened is because everyone who worked at Nokia used a Bluetooth headset and never realized that the phone would look ridiculous up against your head.
I only ever saw one of those in the wild.
I have one of
person
those in my
actually talked to
apartment,
me.
and I don't think it was even that. I think it's just everything about that phone was poorly executed. I didn't buy it.
I was just going to say, why do you have
I was
that?
given an N-Gage in several games, and I played Tony Hawk on it enough. The buttons, everything about it is terrible. Like I physically crippled my fingers trying to play a game on that device.
One of the things I'm really sad about is that the side talking website, like somebody took it down a few years ago, and that had the best collection of people side talking on their gadgets.
Well, that's what Tumblr's for.
Well, I guess now this is
We don't need to buy domain names anymore. We have Tumblr. But what I was getting to is, it's third iteration right now. It keeps getting progressively larger every single iteration.
Well, the screen gets larger, but
Yeah.
they've been able to shrink the bezel size and the thickness, so it's actually not really that much larger than the Note 2.
But I'm just wondering, is this because obviously obviously Samsung is a big fan of testing form factors and pushing them to the limit. So does it just keep getting bigger until people won't buy a phone that large?
Eventually, it'll be a 10-inch screen that folds up into a 5-inch one. That's where they're going.
There are rumors right now that LG's got that foldable screen finally coming out.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
I mean,
it'd be nice, but
that's going to solve a lot of problems, right?
I
It's
suppose.
granted, there's going to be a lot of additional problems of trying to figure out what to do with a foldable phone. But
Yeah.
you'll be able to get a really large screen, certainly.
I'm sure people will figure out something to do with it.
Yeah, or there'll be a really good Tumblr based around it. So, I mean, all in all, best phone out there right now?
I mean, that's such a hard.
Best Android phone?
That's such a hard question to answer because there's so many great phones right now, not just Android, but just across the board. I think that that they got a lot of things right, and I think that again, you really see the benefits of the additional resolution at this screen size. And so I think that if people like larger screens, and I think that there's a market for people that want to have one device and not necessarily a tablet and a phone.
I mean, clearly,
there's a market for these things.
We laughed at the first. A lot of people laughed at the first Note, and it
sold way more than I thought it would.
Yeah, it sold more than I think anybody thought it would.
Yeah,
I'm used to being wrong, so.
Well, I mean, we're going to have the HTC One Max coming out in a few weeks, and so that's supposed to be even bigger. I think like 6.4 inches or something like that. Do we know the size?
I mean, I'm used to saying that. Oh, that's ridiculous, and then
Yeah.
So
I've just given up.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just out of steam.
I mean, if you think about it, like, given how big the market is for mobile devices, which is, I think that there's something like 1 billion smartphones sold every year now, and the idea that there would be just a huge spectrum of them from 3.5-inch devices to say the maximum size for a tablet, say 11 inches or something like that, that there would be a device size for every sort of increment in between. I mean, that just seems natural. It's just like, if you think about
Samsung has one for all of those categories.
I mean, think about what the laptop market, I guess was like in its heyday. I mean, you could get like a netbook which had a 7-inch screen, and then you could get a laptop with like an 18-inch screen, and you would have sort of every step in between. You'd have a laptop to fit that. And the reason they do that is because as long as people are going to buy them, they're going to make them. You can't argue with it.
It's fine.
You guys sound like a bunch of communists.
It's a perfectly logical argument.
I think that Samsung should be brought outside and shot for making a phone that large. All right, let's move on. More Samsung.
Go back to Russia.
Let's move on to maybe what I don't think is going to be quite as successful a device in its first iteration, which is the Samsung Galaxy Gear, which really to me feels like Samsung realizing the market's going to go this way, realizing that every single other major manufacturer is going to release their own watch, and just trying to kind of beat everybody to that punch, and maybe coming out with a device that isn't quite ready for actual consumers to buy it.
Yep, sounds about right. I mean, they've even admitted it themselves that the big problem is there's no killer app. Nobody needs a smartwatch.
That's a big problem.
That's the biggest problem.
I think there's so many problems with this phone right now that it's hard to, or this watch right now.
Getting away from specifically that watch, smartwatches in general, there's basically no reason to own one.
Well, yeah.
Nobody has given
you're saying the biggest problem with this thing is that there's no purpose for it.
Yes.
That's fair.
Okay, I mean, in the category in general, the Gear specifically.
The category in general,
a smartwatch. A smartwatch has not come around yet that has made you want to buy a smartwatch.
Exactly. There hasn't been that moment where there hasn't been that product where I go, okay, that makes sense. This is a feature that I can see myself not just maybe using once in a while, but is indispensable and will change the way I use my technology. There hasn't been that that iPod or iPhone moment where I'm like, no, I need an MP3 player. That's a thing I have to have.
But you're a big like fitness app guy, right? At least you test out a lot of those devices for us, and certainly that application makes a lot of sense for a piece of hardware like this.
It does make a lot of sense. The problem is that it's still dependent on the phone. So I have to wear the watch and still carry the phone to run Runkeeper, let's say.
But you're not going to have your phone on you anyway. You're not going to be listening to your sweet jams.
Not necessarily.
No.
Yeah, not necessarily. Like sometimes when you run, you don't want to have, especially if you're carrying a Note 3.
That's the thing, and that's it only works.
It only works. Well, that's what I was getting
works with
around
the
to.
Note 3.
Is the problem. But
if I'm carrying my phone, why do I want to wear this other expensive piece of technology and sweat all over it? So I can ruin $800 worth of technology instead of just $5?
You're going to ruin probably most of your pieces of technology with sweat.
Oh no, that's true.
It's not. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's on your wrist. I agree with you. Obviously, but the hardware market has shifted in such a way right now that the model for most of these new spaces is let's launch a platform and wait for the killer app to come. I mean, Google Glass is a really good example.
No, and that's fine.
The difference, though, is that Google Glass is a device that was launched at a $1,500 price point and was for very specifically for developers.
Yeah, it's
so
not for
getting
consumers.
into people's hands.
It's not in Best Buy.
Yeah. But again, Samsung. I mean, Samsung has proven in the past that they have the resources to just throw something out there, and they're willing to do that. I mean, they are willing to come out with as many devices as possible and wait for something to stick.
And I mean, and they did a good job of getting application partners to develop things for it. It's just none of them seem particularly appealing. Like even apps that I love I can't figure out why I would possibly want to use them on a wristwatch like Evernote or Pocket. I don't understand what I could possibly want to do with these things on a screen that's,
Notifications
I can
are
understand
nice.
notifications. I can understand
Yeah.
wanting to have Evernote sync on your watch if you have like, like some piece of data that you want to be able to like refer to when you're doing something.
Yeah.
I could think of circumstances where you'd want to be able to like.
But again, but I can think of some circumstances is very different than I want to spend. How much is this thing? $300 for something that works with my Galaxy Note 3. I could possibly see myself using this at some point is not quite the same as like I'm ready to go out there and bite the bullet on this thing.
Well, I think that first off, the price is too much, right? $300 is too much for essentially an accessory.
The price is too much. It only works with one device now. Obviously,
but that's a fixable. That's something that's
it's
fixable.
going to change.
It's easier to fix that than the price.
The hardware. There's a lot of problems with the hardware. It's just too big, right? That's one of the nice things about the Pebble is it's roughly the size of a watch. This is a big, bulky thing. There's problems with the placement of the camera on it.
I don't even know why it has to have a camera. That's the part that I can't figure out.
I don't quite get that either.
Well, no, I had this conversation with somebody else, which again, why would you
Spy
need
shots?
a camera?
Yeah, so
exactly.
somebody at Samsung watched
Apparently
way
it's
too
got
many James Bond.
Apparently, it's got a really loud shutter on it, though. Like for that very
Great.
reason, for the same reason that they had to implement those in like Japan. Do you remember that when Apple had to add the shutter sound?
Yeah.
Because obviously it's really easy for spy shots. I had this conversation with somebody when this was unveiled at IFA, and the consensus that we came to is a front-facing camera would make sense, right? Like really doing Dick Tracy, like VoIPing
Video,
in on
yeah.
on your wristwatch would be pretty cool. But it's right there.
Yeah. It
might as well have a little dart
They don't have
shoot
the
out of it.
bandwidth to have. There's not the bandwidth over Bluetooth LE to do HD like the video.
Yeah, at that point you'd have to build all that hardware into the watch, and that watch is certainly not powerful enough to do all that.
The
on its
battery.
own.
The battery.
And then the battery would last.
It's like 4
3
seconds.
minutes.
Yeah.
Again, obviously the hardware is not out there, but I could see that potentially being a possible use for a camera on a watch like this.
But I think how much is a Pebble? Like 150, 200?
I have no idea.
Once these things get down to like
You've
$50
got a
or
keyboard.
$100, I think it becomes easier to make the justification for the sort of ambient data and notifications and those sorts of things.
See, that makes sense.
150,
So,
yeah.
150. If it was $50, I would even argue that 100 is too much. For $50 to get, an alert that you have an email or pop up a text message, that I could see. $300 to snap photos from my wrist for Evernote doesn't.
Well, and this is the other ultimate hardware limitation that you're invariably going to run into these things, and this is coming from somebody who's just saying that a 7-inch phone was too large, but I think a 1.5-inch screen is probably too small to do just about anything except read small notifications.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's as I said, like that's why it makes sense as a $50 accessory, not as a $300. Like at $300, it's a crappy phone, right? But at $50, it's an awesome accessory.
Do you guys see that changing? Obviously more players are going to get involved. There's a good chance Apple will be. Is there a chance that this may actually be a viable space and not a $50 accessory space?
I think it is I think it's going to be something where eventually the high end of the market will maybe be like $150. The low end of the market will be like $30, $50.
Yep.
And then like the decent stuff will be there'll be decent stuff in between. I don't think, but to me it feels like, it feels to me like it'll be a viable market in the same way that like keyboard cases are a viable market, right? It's like, people will spend $20 or $50 or $150 on a keyboard case for their iPad or their tablet or whatever. But it's an accessory business. It's not necessarily like something where it's going to be this big, huge franchise that drives Apple's profits.
Exactly. But none of really the major manufacturers right now are in the accessory business. They'll make cases for their own devices, but they're not making devices that are specifically accessories. Save for Microsoft, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. It's like I think that it's not that it won't be a successful market, but I think it's just the scale. I just think it's not going to be a market where, we're going to see it's not going to be like Apple's next big franchise, like the iPad turned out to be.
What could Apple possibly price a smartwatch right now to make a lot of people want it?
I think if they price over 150, they'll
150
sell
is
every.
gonna be-
If
Do
they
you
sell
think
one
they
for
can hit
150, they'd sell
150?
every single one they made.
Do you think they're going to be able to hit 150?
They'll probably start at 200.
That's what I'm assuming too. That sounds like a
$300 just feels like, I mean, I don't know how you even justify $300 for like the cost of goods.
Samsung has never had trouble justifying high prices. I mean, they could have.
Well, I mean,
but it's just like I'm trying to figure out how they even like put $300 worth of stuff. I mean, or whatever. Like it's.
I mean, they're having trying to justify it, but actually justifying it.
Well, actually selling anything is obviously is a very different story. Is there any question in anybody's mind that this thing was rushed out a bit to get it out there?
No. It's clearly rushed. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd heard about 18 months ago that they were working on this. So I guess it depends on whether that's a short amount of time.
Well, rushed in terms of them, even if it took 18 months, maybe not having a product that was really ready for market.
Well, definitely, I think given all the reviews, you could argue that they should have waited a little bit. I think that they wanted to. I think that Samsung has this. There's a perception of Samsung always being like a fast follower, where they always wait for somebody else to get into a market, then they jump in, and that's actually been a really successful business model for them, like
for
a strategy for them. Well, for Apple too, but right, it's like it's like they weren't like the first out the gate with an Android phone, and they weren't even really successful in selling Android phones until a couple of years ago. But they waited and then kind of pounced and used their huge scale to be able to like do things more cheaply and effectively than their competitors.
They're probably making 85% of the components for this thing.
Yeah. So I think maybe with this one they wanted to sort of, not that other people haven't come out with smartwatches before. I mean, Microsoft came out with the Spot Watch.
Sure. Sony's
10
on
years ago.
What, 3 now?
Yeah. But I think that there is a perception of like, we don't want to just follow. We don't want to be after Apple on this one.
Yeah.
And so even if the product wasn't great, I think that they felt like there wasn't necessarily a lot of downside to being 6 months ahead of Apple or something like that, rather than 6 months behind.
I mean, there's downside to releasing a product that isn't quite ready, and maybe having that taint subsequent devices.
I don't think it will, because I think that like they found that they could put out like, I mean, their first Android smartphones were not that great, and it certainly hasn't hurt them long term. Their first TV, I mean, I think that they've been able to get away with like, as long as they make it great, eventually. I think that they can get.
Yeah,
away with it.
I mean, I don't disagree with you in a sense, but I also think that like making phones is different than making a watch, because you're gonna have one line of smartwatches. It's not like.
No, they could, but why? If everything we know about Samsung, they're probably going to have.
You
like
think Samsung's gonna?
That'd be
this
the
time next year.
thing.
Do you think Samsung is gonna have several smartwatches?
There's going to be like the Gear Mini 2 and like the Gear Note 4.
The Maxi,
and like the
smart Maxi watch.
There'll be like the Gear Active that's waterproof.
It'll just be like that that Futurama, like just a whole like a wrist brace for that.
I think they're going to have
This
a
sounds
ton of these things.
That might be a good next step. A full like
wearable
screen
arm.
for your arm.
Plenty of people have done that, but I guess it's time for Samsung to get into
I
it
think
and bring
it's
it to
time
the
for
consumer.
Samsung to enter that market. I don't think there's any question about that.
I don't know that I want to live in a world where Samsung has 14 different smartwatches.
I know you're not ready for it.
You better get off this planet real soon, because that's where we're going. We have an escape plan.
Samsung.
How much is a flight on the SpaceX thing?
Samsung also has 50 different tablet lines right now. The latest version of the Note 10.1 came out.
It's very much like the last one.
The screen resolution is
yeah.
much better. That was the big complaint about the last one.
Yeah.
It was like certainly for something that size, it was awful.
Dude, I think for a 10-inch tablet to have, what was the resolution for? It was like
1280 by
1280.
800, I think.
I think so.
You can't do that.
Yeah. Well, it was.
You can't take that seriously.
But
It was like a generation behind. I mean, they had clearly the hardware ready very far ahead of the actual release. I mean, we had the preview of it, and then they spent like 12 months trying to perfect the software, and kind of did a.
how can we ruin Android to our specifications?
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is this one again has a really good screen on it, but the base cost is $550, which again gets into that whole.
Yep.
Samsung doesn't know how to price things. Probably.
Yep.
Well, I think they're looking as like, this is a device for people that want to pay a premium for a great pen-based experience. on their tablet.
Samsung. I mean, I think Samsung. Part of Samsung's business model is if we price things at a premium, people will assume that they're premium devices. Right?
Yeah, which is kind of fair. I mean, it's a decent point. If you price it too low, people aren't going to perceive it as a quality product, regardless of how good it is. But I think pricing it above the iPad is a major, major mistake.
That does. I mean, that brings us to the next product that we were going to talk about, which is the Kindle Fire HDX, which I had a chance to review, which I gotta say, I think it's a premium product priced at $229.
Yeah.
I don't think that's. I don't think the low price of that device is going to dissuade people from buying it.
No, I mean it's also a completely different category of device, though. A 10-inch Samsung with a stylus versus a 7-inch device from Amazon, primarily geared at reading, is they're very different beasts.
I don't think it's primarily geared at reading.
And it's also
Well, media consumption maybe.
yeah. And
But I think like the Note 10.1, I mean, I think that they like I said, like I think they justify the premium price because if you want like the best kind of tablet for pen-based input, I mean, the iPad's not really, it's not a better choice, I mean, the technology has improved, and I think when you look with the additional resolution, you're going to be able to get a better, you're getting actually more bang for your buck in terms of the pen-based experience.
But do you think that market is big enough for pen-based that that having the claim of being the premium pen-based tablet is enough to move a lot of units?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how big that market is.
Yeah.
But I think they must have sold enough of the last version of the original Note 10.1s to feel like it's worth doing a successor.
I always wonder.
How many do you think they sold?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I don't. This just seems. I don't know. I don't see a lot of people going out there, and maybe this could be different in Korea. I mean, this could be different in other parts of the world, but certainly here in the States, I don't see a stylus being a make or break for very many people on a tablet. I mean, it makes a lot more sense on a smartphone than it does on a tablet, right?
I mean, I think it makes sense in both spaces. I think the problem is that the novelty of it and the lower investment is an easier sell on a handset than it is a tablet. You're not getting AT&T or Verizon to subsidize the price of a 10.1 to $200 or $300. You've got to shell out almost $600 for it. That's a relatively large investment. I don't think that people's desire to have a stylus on a 10-inch tablet is big enough to compensate.
I guess I just don't see as many people doing as much enterprisey stuff on a tablet as they would on a smartphone. You're either going to end up doing it probably on your mobile device because you're on the go, or you're going to do it on your laptop, right? And I mean, it's an interesting question because this is one of the things that Amazon brought up when they were showing me the Fire the other week, was that they're making a really big push to the enterprise because people are bringing their tablets to work, so they say, but I just don't see a lot of people bringing their tablets to work.
Yeah, in a way, you might be kind of embarrassed to bring your Kindle Fire to work.
Yeah, but any can you? I've seen this from time to time, but how often do you see somebody like sitting in a meeting and pulling out their iPad and typing on it?
All day. Like I've saw it.
You see it all the time?
I see it almost every meeting I've been at.
I see it
here.
on occasion. Yeah.
I see it almost every day here.
What I've seen more of, though, is since it's become much more obvious with the launch of the iPad Mini, though, I see a lot of those. That's what I see. Like, people don't necessarily want to carry around a 10-inch tablet if you're commuting and traveling and bring that to work. I see a lot more 7-inch. I see a lot of the iPad Mini.
But here's the other thing too is you're probably, I mean, if you are bringing a tablet to do work on, you're probably also bringing your keyboard case along with it, right?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
No? All right, we're in very different meetings because I don't see people inputting a lot of stuff with pens on tablets in meetings.
I didn't say pen, but I definitely
just
typing.
Finger typing
Yeah.
meetings. I don't know what meetings you guys are going to, but I clearly have not been invited to them.
I'll invite you next time.
There's a reason for that, Brian.
Is it because they're tablet-only meetings and I'm not invited to? I don't have my tablet to bring.
You can only read the emails on your tablet.
Yeah.
So.
This is a super nice device, the Kindle Fire HDX. It's got a 1920 by 1200 screen, so it's got the same resolution as the Nexus 7, 2.2 gigahertz quad-core processor on it.
Look at you.
Which is I just reviewed this thing.
You're all memorizing specs and
versus
stuff.
versus a 1.5 on the Nexus 7. I mean, it's a premium device.
Yeah.
Everything about it I like a lot, save for one major factor. It's running Fire OS. Now, again, like that's going to be very good for most people, I think.
Who don't care about
Yeah,
things.
exactly. People who don't know what operating system it's running will be totally happy with Fire OS.
Yeah.
I could even see,
Didn't we had this conversation last week?
Yeah,
I think we have this conversation
every week.
Yeah.
There's
feel like
not
this
a
is
lot
like
to talk about this week, Peter.
we can
What do you-
make stuff up.
What do you want to talk about?
Here's okay. Would you buy the Fire HDX or would you buy the Nexus 7? Personally, just you. I'm not saying just for the average person, but you. What would you buy? Because there's price parity for the same price.
The deal. Okay, so the deal breaker for me is not the operating system so much as the lack of Google Play access. So if I want to, I don't actually even own a tablet right now. I was thinking about it a little seriously. I know that's why I can't go to those meetings.
Whoa.
But if I want a tablet, like it's got to be able to run Netflix on it. There's got to be like a Netflix app. There's a lot of things on it that this just doesn't have. I mean, you can do Hulu on it. Obviously, you can do all this Amazon stuff. Spotify is on there. That's nice. But I think there's just too much that I would want to do on it that's not currently available in the Amazon App Store. Some of that's going to change. Peter, you brought out the stat either last week or the week before about there being it being like 33% of all Android tablets sold
in the US, yeah.
which is a huge number.
It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I mean,
This says a lot about how Amazon is able to market stuff.
Yeah, but and obviously as that number either gets larger or and I think probably this holiday it'll push up a little bit. But as that number gets larger, more and more developers are going to sign on to create apps for it. But there are probably going to be certain things that Amazon just doesn't want in their app store.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't want you buying content from another place. They're willing to have Spotify on there. That's kind of a competitor to the Amazon Music Store, but not really.
Yeah. Until Amazon decides they're going to do a subscription music service, Spotify is safe. But the moment that happens,
You think they're going to have the balls to knock Spotify out of the App Store?
I don't know.
I don't think they would knock.
I
them
think
off.
once it's in there, I think it's pretty.
I think that's probably, and I don't think you'll never get Netflix on it for sure. I'm a little amazed Hulu is on there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what deal. But it's. I guess it's a competitor with Prime, but
Yeah.
it's not as analogous as Netflix. Netflix and Amazon's content are very similar.
They're on a
when it comes to
collision
mission.
course.
Yeah, they're more or less the same.
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting one on a regular. The one that doesn't give me free shipping on everything I buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have to give either of them up because I don't get the on-demand streaming from Amazon. I'm just coasting on that student Prime subscription.
Dude, you can't admit that in public.
They'll cut me off. It's fine.
But it doesn't have the streaming on it.
No, you just get the free 2-day shipping. Also, I was in school a lot more recently than anybody else.
Actually,
it's not like that was all that long ago.
You're late for class now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that sort of thing is a make or break. But I mean, for the most part, like gaming, they've really upped the gaming on this thing. It's I played I can't remember the name of it. It was an EA racing game. It's really great. The graphics are fantastic. It's super
Well, they
responsive.
definitely care a lot more about performance this time around. Because if
unquestionably.
you go back to the original Kindle Fire, I mean, that was the chief complaint was how sluggish it was, how it wasn't very responsive.
It just
was
wasn't a
painful.
good piece of hardware. I mean,
Well, it was more or less. It was the playbook.
OEMs, yeah. It was just a kind of a hunk of plastic.
Yeah,
and it's and it's gotten better and better every generation. And I don't think everybody expected it to necessarily go in that direction because, and Amazon has been very public about the fact that they're selling these things at cost right now.
Yeah.
But you can't compete. You can't compete based just on content.
Yeah.
Because you can get great stuff off of Play, and certainly you can get great stuff through Apple.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think it also says that I mean, the consumer expectation of a good experience is, I mean, those expectations have risen, and I think that one of the things, I mean, especially given how many people who might be buying one of these Kindle Fire tablets have also used an iPad, and if it feels like a worse experience than their iPad that they've used from their friend or the other iPad they might already own, then make someone less inclined to buy, much less inclined to buy one. I mean, I know people that have that had a bad experience with the first Kindle Fire and was like, okay, I'm not going to buy another one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've got to imagine that a huge percentage of these are bought as gifts anyway, right?
Well, that's one of the things, and that's why I think the fact that they're able to get the prices low, to drive the prices as low as they can.
So these are gifts for people who know that they want a tablet, have seen tablets out there, have seen a family member with tablets, but they wouldn't know what to do with themselves if they walked into a Best Buy and picked them out. I think, and Mayday, which is kind of the biggest new software feature on this, is very clearly Amazon addressing its base. So what they know to be its base, which are a lot of older users, a lot of relatives, and kind of younger users. It skews to both end of that. And it's a software feature that basically pops up a little video conference screen on the bottom, and somebody will help you through your problems.
Yep.
It's kind of cool. It's a little weird to use the first time. I've got to admit, I felt a little bit awkward talking at my tablet.
Were you just like, I'm just testing it? Like
I've done that every time. You can, if you watch the video on the site, it's me saying, "Hey, Jennifer," or whatever her name is, "I just need you to draw a couple things on the screen for me so I can show people how this works." They were like, and it was funny because they've spent the last couple of months doing all the testing, so they had their round of doing it only through Amazon developers. They had their round of doing it with reviewers in the past week or so, and then it was really funny sitting next to Jeff Bezos and having him show us the feature for the first time, and the person on the other line being like, "Hi, Jeff. Like, what can I help you with today?"
What we should do is we should get a Jeff Bezos impersonator, like a lookalike.
No, but that's the
call
thing,
up
Peter.
Mayday.
But that's the thing, Peter. You can see them, but they can't see you.
Oh, that's right. Well, then how do they know?
I think it says Jeff's. They know who's they knew, which might be a little troubling.
That makes sense. I forgot about that part.
That might be a little too much personal information.
So.
But they tried to nip that in the bud. So if you
can't actually see me, but they have my entire personal history. They know like what my favorite food is and where I went to grammar school and all that stuff.
Yeah, the fact that you.
What embarrassing things you purchased recently?
Yeah.
What embarrassing things you've had overnighted?
Yeah, I mean, but again, this is all information that Amazon already has access to. They're not getting any more. They can. You can ask them to freeze their screen, so they're basically just, it's like a kind of a remote access PC help feature, and they can see your screen. You can ask them to freeze it while you're entering a password and things like that. I think it's an innovative idea. I think it's a really interesting idea. I think it could go either way. It's hard to say how popular it will actually be. I mean, it's going to be a huge resource investment on Amazon's front. They've already got a lot of people in place now. They've already got a lot of people doing like phone help and web help, so a lot of those people will just be converted over. But they're trying to get it to a point where anytime you dial in 24 hours a day, somebody will answer you within 15 seconds.
That sounds basically impossible.
I mean, if anybody can do it, it's probably Amazon. But
it's going to be an infuriating 15 seconds, though.
Why won't they answer me?
But I think actually, like we were saying about this being a great gift, is that the Mayday feature actually I think would make people more inclined to give this as a gift, because then you don't have to do the tech support yourself.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's like, hey, don't bother me.
It's funny because they're also like very aware that this is going to be getting a tremendous amount of traffic on Christmas Day. It's going to be people opening it up and actually trying to figure out their device, and then people just kind of messing around. There's going to be a lot of people.
They're going to have to hire like an extra million people just for that day. They're just going to
on Christmas Day too.
They're going to actually cure unemployment in this country for one day.
I think it's great. Good job, Amazon. If this is what turns the economy around, then I'm all for the Mayday button.
Are there going to be celebrity Mayday experts?
That's not a bad idea. Like a golden ticket, like every once in a while it'll be like
Sylvester Stallone just walks you through your problems.
Maybe like a
Wasn't
Frank
that
Stallone or like a
Didn't somebody do that? Like somebody was trying to promote their movie and they went on chat roulette. Who was it that did that?
God,
It feels like something like James Franco would do.
that's just
Yeah, it does.
yeah. He seems
Everything terrible sounds like something James
James
Franco.
and he should be the Mayday celebrity Mayday.
well.
rep.
James Franco and chat roulette certainly, like if anybody can kind of weather the storm through an hour of 10-second dong pictures, it's probably James. Did you see Spring Breakers?
No.
Now I'm picturing him going into Mayday dressed as his Spring Breakers character.
That'd be pretty good.
That would be
I used
awesome.
to watch it.
With his
Yeah,
grill.
that's I don't really want it.
His grill.
I like it a lot. I like the case a lot.
I thought we were still talking about Spring Breakers.
Oh, I like Spring Break a lot more than Spring Break is now officially my favorite Harmony Korine movie, for whatever that's worth. Beat out Gummo.
Yeah, there's a low bar.
Also got a chance to review the Amazon Kindle Paperwhite. Here, interesting that like to they announced their two biggest hardware products within a couple of weeks of each other, and neither one of them actually had an event based around it.
Which was a little weird.
I couldn't get a straight answer for them. I asked them, and they basically said they like to shake it up a little bit. Jeff Bezos, he wants
totally
to be
legitimate.
Steve Jobs, right? I mean, he wants to be the guy standing on stage announcing an exciting new product.
Maybe he doesn't after us reusing all of the images of
Do you
him standing
think
in
our
front of the
photoshopping
slides.
is what
There's no
changed?
photoshopping. It's just him in front of his own slides, and they are magical.
Yeah. Poor Jeff Bezos.
Well,
Poor billionaire Jeff
It's nothing
Bezos.
personal.
Yeah, I think that there's a point where you go to the well too many times with these events, and people get kind of burnt out on them. Like the press gets burnt out on
But
them.
I don't think once a year for a major hardware announcement is too much.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Well,
think
there's not just one
I
major
think it's just not.
company announcement
They're going
a
to
year.
sell just as many anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. I mean, they didn't necessarily need to do it that way.
You think it was just cost cutting, or?
Not even just cost cut. Well, first of all, the margins are very thin on these things, so anywhere you can save money.
Well, yeah, they sell those press events at cost.
But I mean, maybe they just decided like that there was a benefit to like I said, there really was a benefit to mixing it up, which is like to actually find out whether there would be any impact on news coverage or sales, and I don't think there was.
So you build excitement for the first couple of generations, and now this established brand, they don't necessarily need it. I mean, if they're really mixing it up, that means that in the future they'll probably have another one.
Well, but the other thing is like the people that are buying their target market for these things are not people that are reading Engadget anyway. Like they're people that are like, hitting the Amazon.com
Well, that's not
homepage.
necessarily true. Their target market probably is really the people who read Engadget and then buy gifts for the people who.
But
don't
also,
read
and on
Engadget.
top of that, Amazon has become prominent enough, and these events have become prominent enough that the event will get coverage on any kind of mainstream media that those people are watching. I mean, you don't have to go on Engadget to watch video from the press event.
Well, I mean, best case scenario, let's say this is an experiment, and they're just like, let's see if it impacts coverage and sales, and they don't do an event, and it doesn't impact coverage, and it doesn't impact
It's
sales.
not going to,
and they
but-
do just as well. Maybe other companies will learn from it, and then maybe we won't ever have to sit through another 2 hours.
So lazy. You're so lazy.
You're killing us.
I just don't want to sit through another Apple day. That's basically it. I just don't want
Well, the
2
funny
hours.
thing is, Apple does. I mean, obviously they've always done a big event for like the iPhones and things like that, but they haven't always had a press conference to announce new hardware and things like that.
No, they do a lot of slipping
They do, but
iterations
but
of like the iMac and
they
stuff
do
out.
about as many, it feels like, as they can kind of get away with.
Yeah, they
right?
do what,
four
3 a
three
year
or four?
I think it's 3 or
something
4.
like that?
WWDC, then they have the
iPhone,
iPhone and iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too many.
That's 3.
Yeah.
I've seen them do. I'm trying to think of the most number I've seen them do in a year is maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And they're all super long. It's not like it's like they do 4 20-minute events where they come out and they go, hey, everybody, look, this is the new iPhone, these are the new features, go out and buy one.
They've gotten a little bit better about. I feel like they've made them a little bit zippier.
The most recent one was a lot better.
The
than
last 2 have been a little bit shorter. I think.
They should make them longer. They should be like 10 hours and just to see,
I think they
see
learned
how
new
long
industry.
how long people will stick with
honestly,
it.
I think they learned a lesson from Google I/O, which is like
That was too long. Yeah.
that's too long.
Yep.
We now know what too long is. We've hit our upper threshold.
Oh my God.
I would just keep pushing that envelope. Just like everyone should be on a treadmill.
You're
You're
describing
like
the
a 3-day festival.
you're describing the plot of Wall-E.
Yeah, no. We're gonna get everyone in shape.
Yeah, there's probably not a reason to have any. I mean, but this gets back to a larger conversation, which is there really a reason to have conventions? Is there a reason that, do we need to do these things in person?
Well, I'm sure this is a really exciting topic for listeners, but if these things kind of expand and contract in terms of the way that people approach things, and it used to be that very few companies had their own events. Most people did their product launches or announcements at a larger event like a convention or a trade show or something like that. Remember, Apple used to basically do things in Macworld, and very rarely did their own events.
Until they basically killed Macworld.
Well, they killed Macworld, and part of it was that, the people my friends who worked at Apple would tell me that like it ruined Christmas every year because like nobody.
Well,
That's
CES,
so sad.
I mean, CES.
Well, they didn't go to CES.
No, but yeah, it's one or the other. I mean,
Sure.
I think part of it is just that Apple wants to prove that they can they can have one event for one company be as exciting as a CES, to get as many eyeballs on it as CES.
Sure, and a lot of
It's an ego thing.
It's funny because like it used to be that the only company that did really its own events really was Apple, or that even did events that were worth live, that did sort of events that were live bloggable, I guess, was Apple. And I always said, look, if Sony and Samsung and all these other companies do their own events, like we'll go and live blog them, and then everyone started doing that.
It's your fault.
I know it is my fault.
You guys
Thanks,
opened
buddy.
the door up for that.
But I mean things are different than it was. I mean, things have not always been this way. Is my point, in that there has been a shift in the way that people do things, and part of it is that companies want to own the day.
Yeah.
Right? They want to have 10 stories on the front page of Engadget.
It never made a lot of sense to me to be a company that's as large as Samsung. I mean, certainly it makes sense for smaller companies to be involved with CES, but it doesn't make sense to launch your biggest product of the year the same day that 50 other people are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I always said the best time to launch a product was the week after CES because there was nothing else to write about.
Yep.
When we're all just passed out.
Yeah.
Um,
There's one guy watching feeds.
yeah. So I mean, it makes sense that it wasn't the Paperwhite that did that because it's. I mean, there's not a lot new about it.
Is there anything new?
But it's better than last year's.
It is better than last year's.
Because I bought last year's, and
Yeah.
it has that weird kind of I don't know what that. It's a kind of like a unevenness in the edge lighting.
the
at the
lighting
bottom.
is off. It was one of those where when it came out, it was the best front lit e-reader, but then they got surpassed pretty.
Well, the Kobo. I mean, the Kobo.
Kobo came out afterwards.
Yeah, but the Kobo Glow definitely had better.
It's
yeah,
great,
better edge
yeah,
lighting,
and
yeah.
this is pretty much on
same.
par with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
But should I buy? I mean, this thing is like, it's like I don't want to buy a Kindle every year, but
Yeah.
that bottom lighting.
that's enough to drive you crazy.
It's not that it drives me crazy, but it definitely does detract from the reading experience. It's
Yeah.
like, is it enough for me to justify buying another? I mean, what's the base model is what, 129 or something?
It's 119. But that's
119?
with the ads built into it.
I don't know. I can deal with the ads.
It's a little bit.
The ads, the
faster.
targeting on the ads is terrible. So
It is. The recommendations that Amazon has are pretty terrible too. I'm hoping that Goodreads will change a lot of that. We'll see. I mean, that's going to be baked in the next over-the-air upgrade. I mean, that was kind of surprising to me that I guess I didn't buy Goodreads that long ago.
When was that?
It's
I
been
don't
a
even
few
remember.
months now, right? I mean,
I honestly don't even remember. I have no sense of time
it's
anymore.
earlier in the year.
yeah, I want to say it was like 4 or 5 months ago or something like that. But
No,
they didn't.
It was more than that.
Was it that long ago?
I think so.
However long ago, they didn't have enough time to actually build Goodreads into the experience. But that'll be coming out. I think that'll be a big improvement. It's a little bit faster. It's a little bit
I'm
lighter.
interested in the Pocket integration in the new Kobo.
The new
That's-
Kobo is great.
That's what I want to know. So, because you're like our resident e-reader expert, basically.
Oof. What have I done with my life?
Yeah, I know. Should I get the new Kindle or should I get the Kobo?
So you're done with Nook?
Well, I mean, I broke mine, so
Yeah.
that Pocket integration is pretty huge for me.
Yeah, I like
Yeah, that's a big. That's
I
a
like
big
the Kindle
feature.
software better. I like the Kindle store better. I think the selection is a little bit better. You're probably still going to get most of the books that you want on the Kobo. The hardware it's much nicer on the Kobo. The Kobo is the first e-reader that I would actually describe as being sexy. Like it's actually just a really beautiful piece of hardware.
Yeah, it is really nice.
It's pricier though. I think it's like $149, so it's going to be
Yeah.
about $30 more than the base model.
Which is
Paperwhite.
tough to swallow for an e-reader.
Yeah, but I mean, you'll spend $150 and you're going to keep that thing around for a while.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're both really great readers. It's basically what it comes down to.
Thanks. That really
Yeah.
helps.
I
Thank
don't
you
have
for
a good
being
answer.
non-committal, Brian.
Here's what I'll say.
If you're not locked into an ecosystem,
Yeah.
then I would take a good look at the Kobo.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
'cause
I would buy the Kindle just because I have
You're
bought
locked
a lot
in,
of
yeah.
books through.
Yeah.
I mean, you're locked. We're all locked into Amazon, right?
I mean, yes, but I've never bought books through it.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
have a
of course
Kindle.
not. Yeah.
Any books I bought have been through Barnes
Are
&
you
Noble.
planning on buying a Fire at any point?
No.
Okay, then you can buy the Kobo. You're fine. Yeah, Pocket integration.
Kobo
is
makes
really cool.
tablets.
They do make tablets. And
I
the
would-
last one.
No, they're okay.
The last one's all right. They've gotten better.
I wouldn't go out of my way for those.
They've gotten better. If you're really excited about Rakuten integration, definitely go with the Kobo. I wanted to tell everybody that Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio, has a free trial. And you can get 10% off by going to squarespace.com and entering the offer code squarespace.com/Engadget. You could build a website as good as Peter's website.
Oh, that's a tall order.
Guys,
don't even try.
just throw your computers away
yeah.
now. There's no reason for going on. A couple more things we could talk about. I want to gauge your guys' interest because we're creeping towards the 1 hour mark. We could talk about Firefox OS.
No.
John took a look at the ZTE Open.
I don't think I'm allowed to talk about Firefox OS anymore. I think I've been banned.
Okay. You're not allowed in developing nations after
Yeah.
what you said. Talk more about the Dell merger finally closing. There's a new GoPro, and we could just hammer home what we always say about Nintendo's place in the world by talking about the fact that they cease production, or will soon cease production on the Wii in Japan.
Actually, I feel like we've covered all 4 of those things just right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Cool. Well, great show, guys.
Well, I mean,
Let me just say real quick that if you're in chat, now is a good time to get questions in.
Yeah.
do that, and for the next several minutes, we'll just fill up airtime by talking about, I don't know, Brian. We need like a bowl of random topics we can just pick out of when nothing goes on.
Or like dice.
Why
Yeah.
is Dell going private? Why is that a good move for Dell?
I actually don't have answers for you.
Dell, Dell released or announced a bunch of products. I didn't put AIM on the list. None of them looked particularly exciting to me. But the thing that
I thought that the XPS 15 looked kind of nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a high resolution screen.
You want to talk about it?
No, but it looks nice. I mean,
But I mean, not enough to make that a topic on the podcast.
I will say that the problem is like you can put a really high resolution screen on a Windows 8 laptop, but Windows 8.1 is not quite there yet in terms of the looking nice on a high resolution screen.
The thing that really struck me that Michael Dell said at the event, I think I saw Mark Spooner from Laptop tweeted out, which was, it actually made my skin crawl. He said, "We are the world's largest startup."
Yeah, that's a kind of a trite.
It's just an
thing to
irritating
say.
thing to say. But I the point being, I guess that we're a huge company who essentially is going to start from scratch. I mean, that's the idea, right? Is he's taking a larger share of the company. He's going to kind of switch the direction of the company. They're known for making cheap devices, not necessarily in a pejorative way, but affordable devices.
Mostly in a pejorative way.
No, I mean I think that the reason for them to go private is that they need to do some restructuring of the business, which is going to be very difficult to do as a public company, given the expectations of the market. And I think the goal here is not to stay private forever. The goal is actually probably to restructure the business, start to show growth again, and then to go public again. And that's actually a pretty common strategy for these things. The trick is going to be that they really need to figure out how they're going to remain successful on the enterprise side of there's been historically very successful in the enterprise business, not just the consumer business.
Yeah,
But
Dells are laptops that you buy en masse.
Yeah, but I think beyond that, just even like their server business and like their infrastructure, the infrastructure business that they have. So I think that they want to, draw inspiration maybe from like IBM, which successfully transitioned from. Not that they're going to abandon hardware, but that they really grow the enterprise services side of their business.
It sounds like they're still interested in making continuing to make a large play on the consumer side as well.
Sure, but I think that it's not. I think that they've probably figured out that the growth is not going to be there, and that it's going to be. They're not going to make phones, and it's too late for them to make phones.
Yeah,
they're making tablets, but the margins on tablets are very small.
PDAs. You don't think they're going to break through the PDA?
They used to make great ones though. What was the Axum? Was a great Windows Mobile device, and it's kind of funny like the false starts that they've had around these things. When they recruited Ron Garrix from Motorola to join Dell, it really seemed like they were going to make a real strong push around smartphones, and they did put out a few, but none of them were very good. And if they'd been really dedicated to it, I'm not saying that they would have been successful because people forget that they had the Diddy. Remember that
I feel like I would remember the Diddy. Was that Puffy?
No,
Puffy approved?
it was their.
This at all.
I think it was their MP3 player.
Oh yes.
I don't remember being
Diddy,
really-
Ditty though.
Ditty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you know
do
who wrote the
vaguely
post
remember
about it?
that.
I found a post from Barb from 2005 about it. But they made a lot of really crappy MP3 players. So I
That
think
is a one-sentence post, by the way.
yeah.
My friend actually owned one of those. I forgot about
Really?
it. Yeah.
You had a friend with Diddy.
Yep.
But I'm saying like this is the problem is that like they basically what happens is like they get to a market.
Stop yawning, John.
They get to a market a little bit late.
Yeah.
Make kind of like a half-assed attempt to
Yeah.
get into it and then get out. And it's like
They were. I mean, I think the strategy all along was to wait for a space to mature and then try to make the budget version of it. But
Yep.
budget also meant huge and crummy.
yeah.
Yep.
No, but I mean, well, yeah. But I'm saying like I think that like I think one of the problems is like in the PC market there isn't really a lot. There's no growth anymore. It's
No.
not that people aren't going to stop buying PCs, but it's that there's not going to be a lot of growth, and that whether or not they're doing enterprise, consumer, high end, low end. None of that's going to really matter if they can't figure out like how to restructure the business model itself. That it's not them selling low margin hardware.
Yeah, I mean they've also been a company, like as I was saying with FireOS before, they've been a company with hardware devices that people buy not knowing what necessarily hardware device they're buying, and I think people are a lot more savvy now. I think the average consumer is a lot more savvy when it comes to tech brands than they were when Dell first started.
I agree.
Sure,
I
but
mean,
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't like. I don't know. I guess I wouldn't slag off like Dell as much as. I mean, I had a great Dell PC. Like they.
I know, but I'm saying
I wouldn't say like Dell
in the
meant more
market
quality.
currently,
I think meant like.
When was the last time? What was the last? I mean, they made some nice high-end XPX devices, sure, but.
I mean, for a while they made nice, reliable, reasonably priced computers, but the quality, I think, did it clearly at some point start to decline on their more budget-friendly models. When it wasn't an XPS, there was a clear shift. Probably, I guess I want to say 2005, maybe, where all of a sudden everything started to be of distinctly lesser quality than many of its competitors.
And once that happens, your brand name is associated with that. With lower-end devices.
And the other thing is that they were late to the game in making premium consumer laptops.
Well, they were late on the premium, but I think also, I think part of what happened is that Dell was able to be successful with their just-in-time manufacturing strategy, right? They held as little inventory as they could. They produced things, and got them out into consumers' hands very quickly and very efficiently and better than anybody else. But the problem is the market caught up.
Gateway.
Well, I mean, the other thing is like whatever advantage they had over other companies like 10 or 15 years ago, say, in terms of like their just-in-time strategy, that other companies closed the gap, and then it became very difficult for them to they lost that. Once you lose that edge, it became harder for them to compete.
When did they buy Alienware? That
was
It was a couple of years ago.
4 years ago, 3
yeah,
like
but
that.
it was kind of, I don't know. It felt like that was also they were also a little late to that game. That was as super high-end gaming laptops were already pretty much on the decline, right?
Yeah. By the way, Samsung's new Nexus XM audio player. I forgot
the Samsung Nexus.
I forgot that they'd used the Nexus brand name before.
We've used peripheral vision before, which Sean Cooper pointed out to me.
Did we?
Do a tag search for it.
Okay.
That old thing was not good as you think it is.
Yeah. God.
Blue and Green Make Cyan wants to know, will smartphone and tablet specs take a backseat to price now that most are powerful? I think there's going to be more of a price war probably in the next couple of years.
I mean, I'd argue
on
that
super high-end devices.
Yeah, on tablets, I mean, I'd argue that already specs take a backseat to prices for the most part.
It depends on the company, certainly.
It depends on the spec.
Yeah.
Right, because I think
I think screens are still important.
Yeah, but I don't think we're going to see
you
a
can still
jump.
make a budget. I mean, as we've seen with the Nexus and with the Fire, like you can still make a budget laptop with a great screen.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, I think, say with smartphones, I think that we're not going to see phones go beyond 1080p or much beyond 1080p right now, because there's not really that much benefit in terms of, and there definitely is a draw in terms of processing power and battery life, right?
So there's just kind of diminishing returns.
There's diminishing returns, exactly, and I think that we'll see more RAM because you can see a real improvement.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to go from now it's like 2 gigs is pretty common in a high-end device. We'll get to 4.
You think it's going to make on smartphones? That's going to make a huge difference for most people.
I think that it will give a performance edge. I'm not sure it will be. I think that it'll be natural for it to progress.
Sure.
to
I mean,
that.
and the operating systems are pushing multitasking a lot more than they were in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying like, so we'll see, improvements. And obviously, everyone is talking. I mean, Apple's making a big push around, 64-bit processors. So we'll see those
And graphics.
start to show up next year in, Android phones. I think there's already a couple of phones, Android phones, that have 64-bit processors. So I think that like we'll start to see like different parts of the, different things that become the differentiators.
The focus is going
The
to
focus.
Yeah.
But I think that the downward pressure on prices is going to be merciless. I mean, if the fact that like Xiaomi is able to sell a pretty nice Android phone for like $300 or whatever, I think it's gonna put a lot of pressure, and it's gonna the companies that are going to get squeezed are going to be like HTC, which doesn't have the scale and the integration, the vertical integration to be able to keep component prices down like Samsung is able to.
So what's the next area where they differentiate themselves? Because as we saw in the Apple event, it's hard to explain the difference between 32 and 64-bit processors to users.
Sure, but I'm saying, but it will be something that we'll start to see.
Yeah. But I mean, there's if the focus is off of screen resolution, if the focus is off of screen size, there's got to be one next exciting thing.
I think
Battery life
is not necessarily.
Yeah, I think that each of the companies is going to probably pick something, and it's not going to be the same across the board. You're not going to see Apple, Samsung, and Motorola battle it out over screen resolution. What you're going to see is Motorola continue to be like, we've got amazing battery life, and Apple is going to continue to just be like, we're Apple. And
who's going to have the thinnest phone next year? That's what I want to know, Peter.
Yeah, I don't even know who has the thinnest phone right now.
Oppo?
Is
Maybe?
it Oppo?
I think it might be.
There's always some like random manufacturers like, we made the thinnest one possible,
Sharp
and you're
or
like,
something,
great,
yeah.
that's everything else about the phone is terrible. I mean, I think we're gonna see. I mean, like my sense is that specs will improve like incrementally. They won't necessarily see like the big leaps, especially because like we're not gonna see that transition from HSPA plus to like LTE that we saw that we've basically kind of gotten through. There's not gonna be like. We're not about to make another transition from LTE to like the next thing, but I do think that the downward pressure on prices is going to be very tough for a lot of manufacturers to deal with.
I mean, is everyone going to follow Nokia's lead and try to come up with a 41 megapixel sensor on their device?
I don't know if that really does
really
enough
done
for
them
people.
very well.
Yeah,
clearly.
but it's also Windows Phone. I think that's the main issue they have right now.
I don't think if you put Android on it, it would be any better.
But I think Sharif in his Z1 review wrapped it up in a nice way, where he said, this is, and again, I don't know if this is enough of a selling point for most people, but this phone doesn't do. There's nothing that this phone does specifically better than any other phone. It just does everything really well. So, coming out with the device that's just really good at everything. Rather than pushing, I mean, we've seen the smartphone race over the past few years has been mostly defined by companies coming out with one really exciting spec on their phone and everything else on that device suffering because of it.
I don't know. Has that really been the case?
I think so. I think
What-
every iteration, like the handsets have pushed, one kind of exciting new thing.
I don't know. I feel like I don't see that in Samsung.
Yeah.
Really, I like the Galaxy S4 probably tries to be too many things and suffers because of it. It's like we put the fastest processor we could and the highest resolution screen and the biggest camera and by necessity now the smallest battery because we had to get it as thin as humanly possible. I haven't seen too many people who are just like, no, this is this one thing we did. Like all of a sudden we have a hexa-core processor and it's super exciting, and then they forget to, get the OS properly calibrated for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there's also just going to be a lot of, pressure to differentiate in terms of services and features, like software features, which is what Samsung's trying to do. And
Which is hard to do on Android.
it's hard. Well, I don't know. I think Samsung's done a pretty good job of it. I think that HTC, showed that you could create a different kind with Sense 5, like a different kind of interface, and not that it was necessarily successful for them in terms of like driving sales, but it I don't think most people who reviewed the one, for example, thought Sense 5 was good. I don't think most people didn't say it was. Most people don't think it was bad. I just think that like it's I think that for a lot of companies it's just that they don't have the resources to actually create the differentiation, to do to put the resources into doing those things. And that's why it's interesting to see, you know, what a lot of the Chinese OEMs are doing in terms of their strategy around differentiation. Is the MIUI, is it Mu or so? I don't know how you pronounce that, but
I have no idea.
Mu. But you know, they have like basically their kind of open source, you know, launcher, which people, you know, there's like a new version released every week, and the community contributes to it and things like that. And that's one way to sort of, you know, think about that. What Oppo's doing with CyanogenMod. Like,
so you think there's going to be more of a focus on differentiating themselves on the software front than moving? I mean, that
well,
has
I think
been
that's
a relatively recent occurrence.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been something that that it's been interesting to see how the Chinese OEMs, which were a lot of times just throwing Android on there and calling it a day, like stock Android, and calling it a day, even if it didn't have like Google, you know, access to Google services, are now looking at like how do we make our product stand out, not just in terms of like, because the hardware is increasingly generic in a lot of respects. I mean, once you get to like a 5-inch 1080p screen,
it's just harder to distinguish yourselves at this point.
And everybody has access to basically the same components at roughly the same prices. You know, when I'm talking about the Chinese OEMs. And so, you know, I think that there's a real strong, you know, prerogative from those guys to figure out what can they do to draw people in. I think the CyanogenMod thing is brilliant. I mean, I think it's a really interesting strategy, and I think there's something like, you know, it's on like something like 7 million handsets, which is in and of itself like a pretty
shocking to me.
Sizable ecosystem. Or I don't know, maybe that's the numbers wrong, but it's definitely like a lot more than you would expect.
Yeah. All right, I think we've gone over. We've run out of time. Thank you guys for joining us. Peter Rojas at Peter Rojas on Twitter. Terrence O'Brien at Terrence O'Brien on Twitter.
Yep.
I am at Beater on Twitter. And before we go, I wanted to say that Squarespace, it's a thing you should try. Squarespace.com/Engadget. Thanks to everybody at AOL. We like our new home. Please let us back in here again.
Please don't make us go back.
Please don't make us go back upstairs.